3, 2. Hey guys, and welcome to Little Big Podcast making of 6/27/13, which was our comeback video. We decided to come back and we decided to do it in style.
Now, there's a lot of backstory as to why we were gone on the show for so long. And if you want to find that out, you can tune into Little Big Podcast episode 184 coming up next Thursday, June 27th. And we'll catch you up on the backstory there. But the reason we're making this video is to tell you about how we made the video on a technical side. For those of you who are more camera savvy, camera interested, that's a really weird way to put that.
Camera savvy.
But if you guys like video making, cinematography, all that stuff, this is the video for you. So we're going to take you through the process of making the video, all the way from brainstorming to VFX, and just basically talk about everything that we did for this video.
So we're going to hit the three major points of making this video, which would be the pre-production, the production, and the post-production. Kind of logical due to the prefixes and lack thereof. But we're going to go ahead and talk about an early build of the video that almost was what we put out.
Right. So we had been thinking for a long time, like, okay, things are finally settling down in our lives, and we have some extra time to maybe like come back, do a little teaser, something like that. So we decided, hey, let's go through and look at all the comments we've been getting over the past couple of months. So we went through and had a good time laughing at the ridiculous amount of comments we had of like, oh my goodness, they're dead, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would say the majority of the comments were people saying either they are dead or in 1 week if they don't make a video, they're dead. It's
exactly,
like,
yeah.
Okay,
so
I get the logic there. That makes sense.
So we screen capped a bunch of those comments that we thought were hilarious, and we kind of put them together in this little montage thing, and we're going to have it open something like this.
Hey guys, and welcome to Little Big Podcast. This is episode 183.
So at that point, when we came back from the end of what you just saw, we would kind of go into something like the original video. Speaking of which, if you haven't seen the original video, now would be a great time to bail out of this video and go watch the original.
We'll have an annotation on screen and a link down in the description.
Okay, so now that we're caught up, when we came back from the cut that you just saw, we would have gone straight to something similar to what we did in this video that we actually made, but a little
minus the phone call. The phone call was actually an idea that we had later on. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but it would have been about the same. Still short film style, still kind of movie trailer-ish, but minus the phone call. And the phone call ended up being actually a very useful tool for this. One of the other things we were going to do is we were going to use audio from episode 183, which we pulled off of the hard drive. We still had the raw audio for that and the raw video. And we were going to have it say something like, hey guys, welcome to Little Big Podcast, this is 183. We're going to have comments drop in. So once again, similar to the final, minus the phone call. So we worked on that maybe in March-ish?
Yeah, somewhere around
like that.
And then things picked up again in our lives, really busy. And we had to drop it for a little bit until we could find time to actually make the story of it.
Yeah, between March and a week ago, it was pretty much going nonstop between... we actually, with our church, we produced a video for the Easter musical kind of thing. It was a video with live orchestration. It was really cool. Then after that, it was youth conference where kids from all over the country come to our church, and it's kind of like a conference thing. Austin and his team were responsible for producing a lot of videos for that. And then after that, it was graduation for college and high school. I graduated, and then after that, there was another conference, and it was, again, very media heavy. So we didn't really catch a breath between there to make this video. And then when we came back to it, we were kind of just wanting to start fresh. We liked what we had, but we thought maybe instead of building it off of comments, let's just build it from the ground up based on the cinematography. So that's where this video came into place.
Yep.
That's it. That's all you have for me?
So we had this idea for a phone call, and this was kind of how we were going to come back into, I guess, the story. And it was a cool idea because it gives us a way to narrate a trailer, narrate a video, without actually having a narrator. So it tells the story, but from someone who's in the story's perspective.
Right.
So it was really, I wouldn't say unique because people do it all the time, But to us, it felt like it was something that would be a little bit more exciting or interesting than just like, 10 months ago.
Right, yeah. And it was something that we could actually work into the story and weave the narration instead of just being kind of like a surface element. We could actually weave the narration into, the main part of the story. So instead of just having this like over-the-top narration kind of thing, like Austin was talking about, like in a world, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We actually had something that was more realistic, but still got across the idea that we were trying to talk about. And it led into this call of action for Austin, who was the one that left the show in the first place. So it worked out really well. And I think that's pretty much all for the phone call sequence. So next we'll go into location scouting.
Okay, so conveniently enough, our neighborhood is really well lit. And the night we shot on, which was last night and the night before, if you're watching this video. Anyway, really weird time lapse. Anyway, June 20th, around that point, the moon is like super, super full, super bright. I think the super moon is like the 23rd.
So tomorrow.
Could be wrong. But anyway, the moon is unusually bright. So we have really bright streetlights, really bright moon, which plays into us being able to shoot at night. And not only having a great camera, which we'll talk about later, but really everything kind of fell together for us to be able to shoot at night with really zero lighting outside.
Right.
So that was a bonus. We could go pretty much anywhere we wanted to go there. So everything that we shot inside of the set is actually set up like it used to be for those of you who've watched our show in the past. Basically, same layout. So we just kind of went through and, all right, what elements in our set would be significant, what are interesting, what kind of have, any kind of bearing on the significance of the story. So like the first shot we opened with was a PS3 controller with a lot of dust on it. So we figured that was a cool way to kind of show like, we've been gone for a while, relevant to what we've been doing.
Right. And that also kind of led into the other shots. It went from something kind of general, a PlayStation controller, it has to do with gaming, but it built more and more specific and ended with our YouTube channel. So it went from game controller to, this is Little Big Planet, this is Little Big Podcast, and then it ended with actually showing me on the phone by a streetlight, which was conveniently placed in the neighborhood that we found to use, which was our neighborhood. So It was very easy to shoot here, and our neighbors put up with us filming into the wee hours of the morning. We were out in the driveway at 1:45 doing some recordings for this, which we'll talk about later, and it was a lot of fun. So then the sequence where Austin actually answers the phone, we shot that in the control room for the live stream at our church. It's lit very well, very cool colored lights, and if you'll remember, it was the place where Austin filmed when he was at college, in episode...
like 2 years ago.
A long time ago.
So, anyway, so it made a cool location. It was obviously different than inside our studio or outside in our neighborhood. But it also kind of had like that technology kind of feel. It was darker. It just played into the vibe. So I was like, perfect, let's do it. One thing that I forgot to mention that I want to throw in here about our phone call, probably some of you will ask, how did you get the phone call? And so we didn't actually drop any, audio or really had a terrible sounding recording. We recorded on something actually much like this, and then we used an effect in Adobe Audition called FFT filter. And basically, just like right now you're hearing me, and it sounds like we're on the phone, but it's just a filter that you run through with your audio.
Right, and it's easy to process, it's easy to do, and it does sound a lot like a phone, because the actual audio that we had before of the voicemail, we did record that straight off of the phone, and at first we were like, maybe we should just do it right off the phone, but Austin found this amazing audio effect, and it made it a lot easier for us to do the audio that way. And it made it a lot less, like, the possibility of my voice cutting in and out that we didn't want, completely took that away. So, after we did location scouting, I guess we can talk about this right now. I guess it's kind of production, so we'll move into the production section, and we're going to talk about the gear that we used. We'll actually come back to this next bullet point on my list. But for the camera, we used the Canon 60.
Right here. Partially close my laptop. I think you could see that.
Yeah.
So this is a Jag 35 shoulder rig. You can find that on jag35.com. Great, cheap shoulder rigs, all made out of aluminum. And compared to other people, I mean, obviously it's just something that sits on your shoulder. It's padded, screws into a camera. So that's really all you need. And we haven't quite expanded our rig out further. You can get follow focus units and matte boxes and stuff. We haven't upgraded to those just yet, but those are next on the list. So this actually works pretty well for us, and it gives you that handheld feel that you're always seeing in different films, different videos, but without actually getting handheld. See, the problem is with these DSLRs, your axis of motion is so tight to where the sensor is, what's picking up the video, that when when you're holding it, the motion's a lot exaggerated. Same thing on phones, stuff like that. So this gives you that handheld feel by making it bigger, bulkier, and kind of more floaty. So you have some counterweights on the back that just kind of help even it out when you pick it up.
Right. And it also takes a lot of the weight off the front of it that you would normally be handling with your arms. The lens that we used for this was a Canon 50mm 1.4. There is a better one that's a 1.2. It's a lot pricier, and this lens actually just did a stellar job for us, and I don't know that we could have asked for a better image quality out of it.
Yeah.
So it did a great job. Very sharp. Even at 1.4, it performed like a boss. For audio, we used the Zoom H4n, which we're actually using right now to record this audio. And then for the microphone, we used a Rode NT3. You can use, Zoom has the built-in stereo mic on top, but for this, we decided to use the Rode NT3, which is what we used for stuff like this and production more like that.
Right.
And then we have this boom mic stand, very generic. I don't even know that has a name brand,
No.
but we picked that up pretty cheap. But we had to use that since we didn't have a big enough crew to actually have someone with a boom mic.
Yeah. So more importantly than the lens that you have or the crew that you have, I think imperatively, and while glass is very important, and I'll tell someone, get good glass first, even if you have a really cheap camera. More importantly for us, though, was the camera that we have behind the lens, and that is the Canon 6D. And it's a phenomenal, actually pretty reasonably priced, full-frame CMOS sensor camera.
Right, and it was Canon's most recent full-frame camera, and it was the entry-level full-frame camera, but some of the specs on there actually perform better than the more expensive 5D Mark III, especially, or 5D Mark II as well. The ISO performs amazingly. ISO is what lets you shoot digitally brighter images, so it lets you shoot in a lot darker environments. So speaking of ISO and all that stuff, let's talk about how to shoot properly. So this is a great camera, but if you don't know how to shoot on it properly, you're not going to get a very good image. So let's talk about that.
Okay, first of all, frame rate. There are a lot of different frame rates that you can go. There's 23.976, or more commonly 24 frames per second. You have 29.97, also known as 30 frames per second, and that's like TV standard. 24 is more filmic, cinematic, which is what we tend to use most of the time. And then you have 59.94, 60 frames a second. And that's good for slow motion, and that's pretty much right now the prosumer range for slow motion cameras. Now, obviously, you move up into Sony FS700, which shoots 240 frames a second, and then you can move even higher to the Red Epic, which is like 300 frames a second constantly. And then there's stuff like the Phantom Flex, which does thousands of frames per second.
A lot more than that, yeah.
So really, there's a very broad range of frames per second that you can look at.
And then in the UK, you have all these different frame rates.
Right,
I think
PAL
it's,
versus NSDC.
Yeah.
So
we're not going to go into that, but there are the different frame rates for that.
So we tend to shoot 24 frames per second, which is pretty close to what your eyes see at. It's just more cinematic in the way movement is. It's more blurred. It's more...
it looks a lot more epic.
Right, yeah.
That's basically the best way
it's a hard way to describe it.
Yeah.
But when you watch most movies, they will be in 24 frames per second. Unless
you're talking like The Hobbit or something, where
Right.
they did the 48. Interesting idea on that. I don't know how well that worked, but
to me, it just kind of ruins it when you're not using it, because basically what you do when you shoot slow motion is you shoot 60 frames a second and then convert it to 24, and that gives you double the frames.
Some games actually output in 60 frames a second. It does make smoother. Some sports are displayed in 60 frames a second,
right?
But it definitely doesn't look as good as when you just shoot in 24 and have the blur. But it is specialized for a specific thing, so it's not as blurry, and your eyes can pick up on things faster. Speaking of blur, let's talk about shutter speed. So shutter speed is actually how fast, there's like a little thing that goes in front of the sensor of your camera, and it basically goes back and forth, and it makes it capture an image in a certain amount of time. Your shutter speed for video should typically be about double your frame rate. So we shot this video in 24 frames a second, so our shutter speed would be 50, which is the closest you can get to exactly double that. If you're shooting in high speed, like if you are shooting 60 frames a second, you can go higher than that if you're planning on slowing it down, and it won't ruin the look of it. There's also plugins and stuff One of them that comes to mind is Twixter, and it takes each frame and tries to fill in between. It's totally fine if you want to crank your shutter speed up to a couple thousand for that. It'll make it a lot smoother, and it'll look a lot better if you do try to slow it down extra in post.
But typically the rule is double your shutter speed per your frame rate.
Right.
So
then we have the aperture. I mentioned that this lens is a 50mm 1.4. 1.4 refers to the aperture, how wide the opening is that lets the light into the camera. The bigger the opening, the better. I think the lowest that I've seen is like a 0.98.
Yeah.
And that also controls your depth of field, how much is in focus at once. So it lets more light in, but then you sacrifice how much depth of field you have. At 0.98, it's literally about that far that's in focus. So really, really hard to keep something in focus. And then as you get further out, it gets a little bit easier. But for the up-close stuff, very, very short depth of field. This one has a short depth of field, which made for some challenges in a couple of shots, but absolutely helped with the lighting.
Yeah. So we're going to speed through these last three really quick here. ISO, or sometimes referred to in the olden days as ASA, is your camera's sensitivity to light. So ASA was like the old days with film. Now with digital we have ISO, and that's for digital brightening, I guess is the easy way to put it. And most cameras have a standard rating. The 60 is about an ISO 200, which is its optimum range for capturing the most brights and the most darks in the same setting.
Right.
Dynamic range is what that's usually referred to. And our camera can go anywhere from ISO 100 to ISO 12,500 on video mode.
Right.
And it's amazing how much less noise there is than some other cameras. We were able to shoot at ISO 800 with hardly any noise in our video.
I've felt comfortable going up to like 5,000 even. We have shot some stuff in 10,000 ISO. The noise is very, very low on this camera, and it'll depend how high you can go on the camera that you have. We're shooting this video on a Canon 60D. ISO 800, you would start to see some noise, and there would be a difference. So it just depends on the camera. And then for our last two, we have white balance, which is making sure that the white in the image is the same white that you're seeing. It makes the image look better. And then the color profile, we shot in Cine Style Technicolor, which actually kind of opens up the dynamic range, gives you more room between black and white to work with, so there's more color, more shades of color in the image. I think that's it for that category. So let's move on to our detail shots. I think Austin already kind of talked about this. We picked some stuff in the set that we thought would represent well the podcast and lead into the rest of the shoot. So we picked a couple items. We used a softbox lighting kit to light it, just one light, and we kind of moved it around as we moved the shots. For the phone call, we just went outside, found a light pole by the house, and we used the lighting actually from the street light that was on. We recorded the audio on site with the Rode NT3 and H4n, and we recorded and processed the audio like Austin talked about in sound booth. For Austin's phone call, we went over to the live stream room we talked about before. We just used the lighting in the room, which was actually just colored LEDs on the ceiling. And then we had an iPhone, which we used for the lighting on the packing the bag sequence. It's just off frame to the left at the bottom corner, and it lit it pretty well for what we needed. It just kind of needed to be a general white light to brighten up the shot a little bit. And then for the sound design, we'll get more into that later, but we actually didn't record any of the sound at all in the live stream room. We recorded completely just video, and then we came back later and did the audio tracks.
And there's a reason we did that, because this is what the room sounds like on the camera microphone.
Sleep it. And go. When we were in there, we didn't want to haul over a mic, and it just made more sense to do the audio in post-production. We'll talk about that later. And also on the running sequence, we used the same location just through our neighborhood. The lighting was just the street lights. For the shooting, we actually had our mom drive the van. We opened the side door, folded down a seat, and I was sitting inside the van with the camera rig on my shoulder still. So we still had that kind of stabilized, handheld-looking shot, but we were able to keep up with Austin and keep everything looking good. And then the sound design on that we'll get to later, but we didn't record any sound on that part either. The final shot, Austin, tell us about that.
Okay, so originally the final shot of the video, when I step into the house, the door closes behind me, it goes to black, and then titles. Originally we had a shot that looked like this. It was just the door opening, my 2 feet coming in from the ground, and then the door shutting, closing behind. And when we first saw that, we were like, oh, that's a cool shot, we really like that. And then Daniel had this idea later, like, whoa, you're going to come blazing running in, and then all of a sudden you take these two little soft steps in the house, and it's going to, unless we show you big time slowing down right before you get in the door, it's going to be a huge disconnect there. So he was like, I have an idea of how to do this better. So the front door of our house conveniently has a huge window next to it, or at least huge enough to fit a camera and a rig through.
Right.
So Daniel's idea was to follow me in, running in, which is the shot that's in the final video.
Running on the shoulder rig, right. Just pointing it at him. I had to pull the focus and make sure that he was in focus when he got into the door. And then as soon as he got to the door, I took it off my shoulder and moved it to the right, passed it through the window to my mom who was standing inside, and she finished the shot inside. So it looks like the camera just goes straight through the wall and follows Austin through, even though it didn't go through a door or anything. There were ways to do this in post-production, but honestly, we didn't feel like spending the time on doing it, and ingenuity found a way.
Yeah, so my mom, even though not a very video-centric person, has become our third cinematographer now in the family. Yeah. So we've trained her well, and she's awesome and very
Thanks,
cooperative.
Mom. You did a great job.
Our crazy
Appreciate
endeavors.
It. Yeah.
So anyway, so that's how we did that one shot. Now we're going to go through and talk about post-production.
Yeah, post-production, we'll try to keep this quick. There's a lot of detail that we could go into. Austin's actually going to open the timeline that we had for the project, and it'll be on the screen behind us, and you'll be able to see some of that. And then when we especially want you to see it, it'll be just overlaid on screen. When we first got back from all the shooting, the first thing we did was we scanned through all the shots we got. And we did this in Premiere. We selected in and out points for all of the shots that we did like. So we were like, oh, okay, this is good. In and then out at the end of the shot. And then when you do want to use it, you just drag it right onto the timeline. All the work is done for you.
Okay, so this is Premiere Pro, and it is a timeline linear-based editing system. And can you keep talking? Because I can't focus to turn my
absolutely.
dock
The next
off.
thing that we did is we picked music for this. We weren't exactly sure what kind of music we wanted. We did know that with the timeline that we were going to be releasing it in, we didn't have time to have something written specifically for this, and neither of us are musically inclined specifically. Like, neither of us are prodigies with the piano or anything like that. So we were like, hey, let's just find a song. So we did some searching through. What was the website that you actually ended up finding it on?
I do a lot of searching on Audio Socket, and it's a great music licensing website. All the tracks up there are actually pretty cheap when you consider that you're licensing and legally using a music track for your videos. So if you're into production, definitely license your songs. Some people are, and even us in the past, have just grabbed a song off of iTunes, whatever. But the right way to do it is licensing your music, and it's actually a lot easier than you think it is. So do some digging around. There are a lot of great sites online where you can license music and legally use it in your productions.
Right, so that avoids all the problems with YouTube having the content ID and tagging and all that stuff, strikes on your account. Ain't nobody got time for that. So just find the right song, license it, and then your life is a lot easier. So then what we did after that was we took all the shots that we had, we took the music that we had and put it in a timeline that looks something like this.
So here on the timeline, we have several different layers of video and audio. Down below we have on audio 2 our music, audio 1 we have recorded, the voicemail, audio 4 is Daniel's phone call, and then over here 3, 5, and 6 are all of our Foley, our sound effects. So each of those different titles down here represents different sounds that go into the making of the video. So the top layer is all of our video, all the different cuts, and it just plays through something like this.
Right. And when we were doing this, we knew from the start that we wanted to shoot it and finish it in Technicolor. We didn't want to do any color grading because sometimes color grading looks great. Sometimes it robs the image of a lot. So I don't know if you can do that real quick, but if you just take that shot and add some contrast back into it,
sure.
You'll see kind of what it does. Technicolor adds a lot of just depth in the different shots. Yeah, that's a perfect one for it. What we did is we shot it in Technicolor. It leaves a ton of detail in both the highlights and the shadows, and it left us a lot of free space to work with when we took it into editing. and we could take a shot like that, whereas normally it might look something more like, put it around 30. So it would look like that. In Technicolor, it looks completely raw and it has a lot of detail left in the shot. So we ended up shooting and editing in Technicolor. We never did anything else to it. And honestly, I think we both loved the way it ended up looking.
I honestly kind of like the flat look a lot, just because it's softer and more dreamy and less. There are times when I like to go really gritty, really black with all the contrast, but I feel like there are times when that's a little much, or I don't know. It's hard, and it's something that I really just try to feel out.
Right, and it depends on the project. Yeah. For this project, we knew we were going to be shooting at nighttime a lot, and we did want a lot of detail in the shadows. So putting the contrast back in would have taken a lot of that out. Leaving it in Technicolor left us with a lot of room to work with, and it made our shots look a lot better for this. So let's talk about the audio layers that you had in there. We actually recorded all the audio for the running sequence and Austin's phone call in post. So do you want to play that through without the music?
Okay, so we have a clip that I actually already rendered out. So you can kind of see, I already showed you down here, these audio layers. Each of those represents a different sound effect, a different, run, step, whatever. So I rendered out a version of this running sequence with me, because most of the Foley was in this sequence. So I rendered out a sequence. I'm going to let you look at it. This is just the audio, just the sound effects with no music. So here it is. So that's what it sounds like without the music. It's a pretty big difference, and it's kind of creepy to think that we recorded those, miles away from where we shot, and yet it sounds like it could be still part of that scene. So Foley's a really cool thing, really useful, and we're going to show you kind of how we did a little bit of that right now. So let me close down here.
This is the bag that we actually used for the audio and stuff, and this is the one that Austin was running with. However, we didn't want to record the audio in the set like we talked about before, because there was a lot of background noise there and stuff like that. So what we did was we had Austin have the bag just right over there in our living room, and we had him just make the different noises. So I'd be like, all right, Austin, I had my earbuds in, I was listening through the H4n, and I'm like, zip it so it goes exponentially up. And he would do something like that. I'm like, okay, do it again, but a little bit faster at the end. So we kind of recorded like 6 or 7 of those, and then we pulled it back into Premiere, and we tried a couple of the different ones with those sounds. For when we actually put the things in there, I was like, okay, we could put the lenses in there, but I don't think we need to. Let's just have you stick your hand in there. So we had him do that a couple of times and just make the noise of the fabric scraping against an object. That's how we got those noises. And then we had him open the bag, close the bag, do a bunch of different things with that. And when we put it back in there, it sounded like we recorded it all on location, but it was a lot cleaner and a lot better sounding.
So one of the trickier things was getting the sound effects of me running. Now, obviously, because Daniel was following either A, on foot behind me and you would hear double the footsteps, or B, he was in the van following next to me and you would hear engine noise and the wheels rolling on the ground. So obviously, any audio we recorded, even if we had this mic sitting on top of our camera pointing at me, we'd still catch a lot of background noise that we didn't want. So we actually recorded all of my footsteps, all of my running with Foley in post. And so we set up the mic outside, and I just got down like runner's position, like ready to take off. And I just ran against the ground with my feet and didn't actually go anywhere.
Now, keep in mind, we've recorded the audio for this about 1:45 in the morning. So I'm thinking, man, I really hope our neighbors don't walk outside right now, or they're going to think we totally lost it.
Yeah.
But it ended up sounding great. And honestly, when you watch it, you can't really tell, especially with the music over top, it just sounds like he's running, and you never would have thought twice about it, unless we broke it down like we did. For the panting, there is some panting in there. I wanted to make it sound like, yes, Austin was running, and he was running for quite a while. So what I did was I was like, all right, Austin, I want you to hold your breath and just do like push-ups and roll around on the ground, do whatever you want, get yourself kind of worked up. And then when you can't hold your breath any longer, let me know. I'll start the recording, and then you can come over and pant into the microphone. So he's rolling around on the ground, flopping around. And I'm like, wow, he's making it pretty long. And he gets over to the mic, and he's like... And he like sniffed and like coughed and all this stuff, and I'm like, hey, this is perfect. I love this.
So
and then we dropped it
when you're recording actual like heavy breathing, like you've been running or something like that, don't just go up to the mic and go, because it sounds fake.
Yeah,
so,
and
like,
everyone can tell.
Actually, either go run and come back to the mic and do that, or like I said, like I did, do a bunch of push-ups while holding your breath, and by the end of that, you'll be like,
yeah.
So that's what we did. And it works pretty well, I think. And that's the thing with Foley, though, is in most of our episode, or the video, I guess, you probably couldn't tell one way or the other unless you're a really, really hardcore video guy like us and you just know. But that's the thing, is you don't want the Foley to be overpowering. You want it to complement, but you don't want it to be obvious in itself unless there's a specific application for that.
Right, like the one sound that we did especially pronounce, one was pulling this piece of paper off the pole because we wanted that to be notable. Yes, Austin did know where to meet me because I was like, yeah, if you're in, you know where to find me. He knew where to find me, so we wanted to emphasize that he did pull this off the pole. And then the other sound that we wanted to emphasize was when he shut the door there at the end, because it went perfectly with the music. We couldn't have timed that any better. It was perfect.
Okay, so let's talk about export settings. So we have all our video done. We skipped a lot of process. Talking about stuff like the 180 rule. You guys can look that up for yourselves on the internet. But basically, what we tried to do with every single shoot that we do is shoot for the edit. Because we edit our own videos, there are a lot of workflows where people shoot and then other people edit. But it helps if you're an editor to also know how to shoot. Because then you know, okay, this will not click with this when I go and cut them together. So it helps to shoot in mind with knowing how you're going to edit it all together. Now, whether that's storyboarding or doing a shot list, or just really thinking through it as you go through. Make sure you're logically thinking through, okay, how will I connect this shot to this shot? How will it not feel awkward? Right. So typically we're only shooting one camera, so we'll go through and do a routine. Like my running routine, I ran down that street 3 or 4 times. One from Daniel chasing me from behind on foot. A couple different angles from the van, one of my feet really close, one of my upper body, So we covered all the angles. And that really helps just with cutting and not keeping one boring long shot all the way. Right. So there's stuff like that you want to pick up on. Make sure that you're not breaking. And once again, you can look this up online. The 180 rule is a pretty basic rule, just not coming across. So you wouldn't want to cut from a shot here to a shot beyond 180 degrees.
Right. Like if you have a guy running away from somebody, he should always be running from right to left or left to right. Don't flip-flop it. So one scene he's running to the left, the other scene he's running back to the right, but he's still running the same direction. He never changed directions. It confuses people. It makes people think, oh, wait, is he running towards the guy now? So just be careful about that. We actually did break it once in this. We came back and we were editing and we were like, oh, we can't use that shot. So we just had to throw it out. Just be really careful. It happens all the time. You can find it in actual movies where people mess up stuff like this.
Right.
So
and one time when it is legal to break it, just for instance, so this isn't like, stick to this. There are tons of reasons where it just feels okay to do it. Like when I grabbed the note off the post and then I cut to an inside angle of me running this way, that, for instance, broke the 180-degree rule. But there are times when it feels okay, and there are times when you can tell it does not feel okay.
Right.
So you just kind of have to, you just have to feel it out. There are a lot of people who are like, just do what feels good. And that's not a great life philosophy most of the time. But for video, honestly, you have to,
it's a great philosophy for
you have
video.
to feel through it and be like, okay, that felt weird. I don't know. I can't explain to you why that feels weird. There are some deep reason why your brain processes that is weird. But most of the time, it's just, that is why it is. Like, you have to cut the other way.
Right.
And one reason that you can, or one exception that you can break it is if you're transitioning over that line in one continuous shot. So if you have an orbital shot that's transitioning in an interview type setting, A/B camera type stuff. Anyway, it's really deep. You can look into it more if you want. But anyway, just keep in mind stuff like that. Shoot for the edit is the basic rule of that.
So now let's talk about export settings, because none of this will matter if you can't export your video and have it still look amazing. So what we did for our export settings is what Austin is about to show you.
Okay, so I'm in Premiere Pro here. Come up to File, Export Media. It'll open up a little dialog box here. And these are our export settings that we typically use. A lot of people will use H.264. It's a great compression format that keeps a lot of detail. It's HD, but it's not a huge, ridiculously large file. I was just reading online that Pixar, for instance, when they render out their films, each frame, so you have 24 of those per second, each frame is 20 gigs of information. So that's a very uncompressed format. And there are a lot of great formats you can use that are uncompressed. But for the most part, uploading to YouTube, you're not going to need something that rich, that raw.
And they won't let you upload that rich and that
raw.
So
typically what we use is H.264. There are a lot of different presets, as you can see here. We have a LittleBigPodcast custom preset. We have stuff from iPhone, Android, YouTube, all sorts of stuff. So typically what I'll do is I'll go and select, just as a base, HDTV to 1080p, 24 frames. And then we'll come down, and I usually change this to 23.976 because most of the time when you shoot in 24 frames on your camera, that will be the actual frame rate. Just check your files and double check and make sure that's actual what you're shooting. Just match that. Then I come down here and change the level to 5.1, which actually messes up my frame rate. I have to go back and change that. So that just renders at maximum depth, basically. VBR, variable bit rate, if I can say that right, just varies the amount of bits that are used to concentrate, some on higher detail, some on lower detail. I usually do a 2-pass encoding, which means it takes 2 passes over the video, renders it twice basically to get the best result. And then YouTube standard, when you select the YouTube presets, only about 8 megabits per second, but we usually will go as high as 50 or 60. For instance, we rendered ours at 60 for our target bit rate and then did like 75 for our maximum bit rate, and that just creates a really sharp, really unprocessed image. It looks great, and that's
but it is a lot bigger of a file.
Right.
So now the one problem that can exist is this is a huge file. So if you're on like dial-up internet and you're trying to upload this, it'll be a while. So just make sure you have something else to do in the meantime. But we actually have a pretty good speed on our upload, so we can upload a video like this. It took it about
5 minutes.
5 minutes last night for us to upload a pretty big
time
file.
Versus upload time was about a fifth.
Yeah, so our upload was 5 times faster. It was great. Once we actually had it exported, we watched it, and the first thing that we wanted to do is get feedback on it. So us being able to upload it that fast, it was amazing. So that's pretty much it for the export settings, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So let's actually talk about what you guys have been saying about this video. I'm actually going to go to the video right now, and I'll pull up some of our favorite comments from you guys. We've gotten almost 66 comments as of right now, and it's great. You guys have been loving this video, and that makes us happy because our sole purpose of making this video was for you guys to get excited about the episode that's coming out on the 27th. Some of our favorites were from Mega Extremist. He said he pooped his pants. Everyone else was pretty much like, wow, I'm shocked you guys are back. Nathan Lawson cried some joyful tears. And then one guy, I can't find the comment right now. Okay, here it is. Conan's boy said, get me to the hospital. My jaw hit the floor too hard. We just loved reading through these comments. So if you want to leave a clever comment on the video, be our guest. We're up to 105 likes on the video right now. If you haven't liked it yet, I'm one of those guys that like never remembers to like a video. Even if I love it to death, I like completely blank on hitting the like button unless there's like an annotation. I'm like, yeah, I should like that. So if you haven't already liked the video, we'd really appreciate it. 2 people have already disliked it. We cried just a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. We didn't. But once again, we've just been loving your response to that. And here's our response to it. We want to do more, so keep it tuned on this channel. If you're not already subscribed, make sure you subscribe to React Studios, and we will have more videos like this coming, not only the making of, but also things that we can make the making of. So subscribe to our channel, and we will be sure to do more of this in the future. Austin, anything else you want to say before we go?
I don't think so. I just want to say thanks. Just for us, people who are getting interested in video, we started with a little Sony CyberShot camera that was my mom's, and we just went from there. We used a lamp.
360p.
Right, we used a lamp
Those were the days.
Without a shade as our light. So really, you can start from anywhere and get somewhere. A lot of you think that I've been to film school, but I actually have not been in film school this entire time.
Neither of us have been to film school. He did go to college. not film school. So we're pretty much self-taught. I mean,
I do have a
picked up some
job
stuff
doing
along the
video,
way.
and I'd have to say that my job is probably my biggest and best classroom. You can learn a lot, and you can learn a lot of textbook knowledge, but until you're doing it hands-on every day, I feel like that's the real classroom. So
Right.
I have a job doing it, 40 hours a week, but I am not actually in class. So we're all self-taught. Neither of us have ever been to a single hour of film school class, except for like Video Copilot online, which is great.
Yeah, Video Copilot is your best friend for learning VFX. Make sure you go there, videocopilot.net. Great tutorials. That's pretty much how we picked up on After Effects. YouTube has amazing tutorials. Just look around. Film school, it's great. I'm sure you can learn stuff there, but YouTube is a great film school as well.
My biggest tip to you is just grab a camera, whatever you have. If it's something cool like this, then good for you. But if it's not, start with what you have. Get out there and just shoot stuff. And eventually you will find ways that you like shooting, ways that you don't like shooting, things you can do better, things that you can leave out. So yeah, just grab a camera, get out there and start shooting.
Yep. So that's it for the making of this video. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. At the tone, please record your message.
10 months ago, something happened, and I don't think either of us expected it. Things didn't end the way they should have, or the way we wanted them to. Disappeared off the radar completely. We can't just leave people thinking that we're dead. We left a lot of questions unanswered, and I think it's time that we answer them. I think it's time that we come back.
If you're in, you know where to find me.